"Dad, she's stealing from you." The words came from across the dinner table, spoken with perfect innocence by my 23-year-old stepdaughter. I watched my husband's fork pause halfway to his mouth. His eyes shifted to me, confusion flickering across his face. Around us, the restaurant hummed with Friday evening conversation, but our table had gone silent. My stepdaughter, Mallory, sat with her hands folded delicately, wearing an expression of concerned sadness. She had chosen this moment carefully. A public setting, witnesses everywhere. My husband's business partner and his wife sat with us, their faces frozen in awkward surprise. I smiled calmly and reached for my water glass. "That's quite an accusation," I said. "My name is Iris Hoffman. I'm 41 years old and I had married Preston Hoffman 2 years earlier. We met at a charity fundraiser where I worked as an event coordinator. Preston was a widower, still grieving his late wife who had passed 5 years before we met. His daughter Mallory had been 18 then, away at college. She seemed supportive of our relationship at first. I should have known better. I had built a successful career managing corporate events, earning a comfortable 6-figure income. I wasn't some gold digger looking for a meal ticket, but Mallory had decided otherwise. From the moment Preston proposed, something shifted in her behavior. "I have proof," Mallory continued, pulling out her phone. "Bank statements showing suspicious transfers. Dad, I've been worried for months but didn't want to upset you." Preston's business partner, Howard, shifted uncomfortably. His wife, Diane, suddenly found her napkin fascinating. I maintained my composure, though my heart raced. I knew exactly what was happening. Mallory had been planning this for weeks, ever since I refused to co-sign a loan for her failing boutique business. She had asked for $80,000. When I explained that decision should be Preston's alone, she'd looked at me with pure hatred. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," I suggested calmly. Preston nodded slowly, his face troubled. What Mallory didn't know was that I had anticipated this moment. 3 months earlier, I noticed small things going missing from my office. A financial statement here, a password written on a sticky note there. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Then I installed a discreet camera in my home office after finding my desk drawers rearranged. The footage showed Mallory, visiting while we were at work, carefully photographing documents. She was building a case against me. I didn't confront her. Instead, I began documenting everything. Every transaction, every conversation, every interaction. I consulted with my attorney, Rebecca Walsh, who had helped me protect my assets during my marriage. "Show me," Preston said quietly, his voice strained. Mallory's fingers moved across her phone screen with practiced efficiency. She had rehearsed this moment. "These transfers," she said, turning the phone toward her father. 20,000 here, 15,000 there, all going to an account Iris opened secretly." I watched Preston's face carefully. We had been married for 2 years, together for 3. He knew my character, or so I thought, but doubt was creeping into his eyes. The seed Mallory planted was taking root. "Those transfers are fully documented," I said evenly. "For the investment property we discussed last month." Preston blinked. "Investment property?" Mallory's confident expression flickered slightly. "Dad, she never mentioned any investment property to you," Mallory insisted, recovering quickly. "Because it's a lie she's making up right now." Howard cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps we should give you folks some privacy." He and Diane stood, making hasty excuses. As they left, I pulled out my own phone. "Preston, do you remember our conversation on March 15th? We discussed diversifying our investments." I pulled up my calendar, showing him the entry. "You said to handle it since I have experience with real estate." Preston's brow furrowed. "I remember that conversation, but nothing," Mallory interrupted. "She's manipulating you, Dad, just like she's been doing since she trapped you into marriage." The word trapped hung in the air. I had heard Mallory use it before, always when she thought I couldn't hear. To her, our marriage was a transaction. She couldn't conceive that her father might genuinely love someone other than her mother. "I think we should go home," Preston said finally, signaling for the check. The drive home was silent. Preston gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw clenched. Mallory had insisted on following us, her car headlights glaring in the rearview mirror. At home, Preston went straight to his study. "I need to think," he said quietly, closing the door. Mallory stood in the foyer, arms crossed, wearing a small smile. "You can't win this," she said softly once her father was out of earshot. I've been collecting evidence for months. Dad will see what you really are. I met her gaze steadily. Evidence of what exactly? Of you stealing from him, using him. You're nothing but a gold digger who saw an easy mark. She stepped closer. My mother built everything Dad has. You're just some event planner who got lucky. I smiled then, a genuine smile that seemed to unsettle her. Mallory, you should be careful making accusations you can't prove. Oh, I can prove everything, she replied confidently. The bank transfers, the secret account, the lies, it's all documented. Good, I said simply and walked upstairs. In our bedroom, I retrieved a locked box from my closet. Inside were copies of everything. Bank statements showing the investment property purchase, fully discussed with Preston via email. Text messages where he approved the transfers. Legal documents proving the account wasn't secret at all, but a joint investment vehicle we'd established together. But there was more. I had evidence of Mallory's own activities. The camera footage of her in my office. Records of her accessing Preston's computer using a password she'd stolen. Screenshots of her social media messages to friends, detailing her plan to expose the gold digger and get Dad's money back where it belongs. My attorney had advised patience. Let her make her move first, Rebecca had said. The next morning, Preston was distant at breakfast. Mallory arrived early, letting herself in with her key. She'd been doing that more frequently lately, always unannounced. Dad, we need to talk about those bank statements, she said, accepting coffee like she owned the place. Preston rubbed his temples. Mallory, Iris explained about the investment property. And you believed her? Mallory's voice rose. Dad, I have proof she's lying. That account she claims is for investments. I have statements showing personal purchases. Designer clothes, jewelry, spa treatments. I sipped my tea calmly. Preston looked at me, questions in his eyes. Iris, those purchases were birthday and anniversary gifts, I replied. From you, Preston, remember. Preston's face cleared slightly. He had bought me several expensive gifts over the past year. Mallory's jaw tightened. That's convenient, but what about the cash withdrawals, thousands of dollars always in round numbers? For the renovation contractors, I explained patiently. They preferred cash payment for the discount. Preston, you reviewed all those invoices. He nodded slowly. I did review them. Mallory's composure was cracking. She's manipulating you, can't you see it? She's got an answer for everything because she's been planning this scam from the beginning. Mallory, Preston said firmly, that's enough. But she wasn't finished. She pulled out a folder, slapping it on the table. Then explain these. The folder contained more bank statements, but these looked different. Highlighted transactions, notes in the margins, calculations showing alleged discrepancies. Mallory had been thorough. These transfers don't match what she's telling you, Mallory insisted. I had a forensic accountant review everything. I raised an eyebrow. You hired a forensic accountant to investigate your father's wife. To protect my father, she shot back. Preston was studying the papers, his expression unreadable. I could see the doubt returning. Mallory had presented her case well. Preston, I said calmly, I'd like you to call our financial advisor right now, ask him about these transactions. It's Saturday, Mallory interjected quickly. He won't be available. He'll answer for Preston, I replied evenly. Preston made the call. Our advisor, Leonard Chen, answered on the third ring. Preston put him on speaker. Leonard, I'm looking at our investment account statements. Can you explain the transactions from the past 6 months? There was a pause. Of course. You and Iris established that account for the rental property investment. Every transfer was authorized by both of you via email. I have all the documentation. Mallory's face paled. But the cash withdrawals for contractor payments, Leonard confirmed. Standard practice for renovation projects to get cash discounts. Iris provided receipts for everything. Preston looked at his daughter. Mallory, what's going on here? She stood abruptly. I'm trying to protect you. Why can't you see that? After Mallory left, slamming the door behind her, Preston turned to me. Iris, I'm sorry. I should have trusted you immediately. I nodded, accepting his apology, but something had shifted between us. Mallory's accusations had created a crack. Preston, we need to talk about boundaries with Mallory. His expression became guarded. She's my daughter. She accused me of theft. She hired someone to investigate me. She tried to humiliate me in front of your business partner. Preston sighed heavily. She's protective. She still misses her mother. I understand that, I said carefully, but her behavior is unacceptable. Preston didn't respond. The silence spoke volumes. That afternoon, I called Rebecca. "It's time," I told her. "Prepare everything." Monday brought a new development. I arrived at my office to find my assistant, Jenna, looking worried. "There's a woman here to see you. She says it's urgent." The woman was my age, professionally dressed, carrying an expensive leather briefcase. "Mrs. Hoffman, I'm Catherine Drake, attorney. I represent Mallory Hoffman." I gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you?" Catherine pulled out papers. "My client is prepared to file a civil suit against you for elder financial abuse and fraud." I almost laughed. Elder abuse? Preston is 52. "Nevertheless, my client believes you've taken advantage of her father's grief to access his finances." I smiled calmly. "Your client is welcome to try." Catherine seemed surprised by my composure. "Mrs. Hoffman, these are serious allegations. My client has substantial documentation." "So do I," I replied. "In fact, I have documentation your client doesn't know exists." I pulled up the security footage on my computer, turning the screen toward her. "This shows your client illegally entering my home office and photographing private documents." Catherine's professional mask slipped slightly. "I'll need to review this with my client." "You do that. And inform your client that if she proceeds with this suit, I'll be filing countercharges for harassment, defamation, and illegal surveillance." After Catherine left, I called Preston. "Your daughter's attorney just visited me." His heavy sigh told me he already knew. That evening, Preston and I had our first real fight. "You're threatening to sue my daughter," he demanded. "Your daughter threatened to sue me first," I replied calmly. "Preston, she broke into our home, she stole information, she's been planning this attack for months." "She's scared," he shouted. "She thinks I'm making a mistake." "And what do you think?" The question hung between us. Preston ran his hands through his hair. "I think this situation is out of control. Mallory needs to back off, but you're talking about pressing charges against her." "She hired an attorney, Preston. She made this legal." "She's my daughter, Iris. I can't choose between you." But that was exactly what he was being forced to do. I gave Preston space that night, sleeping in the guest room. In the morning, I found him in his study, surrounded by papers. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Reviewing everything," he said without looking up. "Every bank statement, every transaction, every document." I nodded and left him alone. This was what Mallory wanted: doubt, division, chaos. By noon, Preston found me in the garden. "Everything checks out," he said quietly. "Every single transaction you made had my approval. Every expense is documented." "I know, but Mallory still believes—" "Mallory knows the truth," I interrupted. "She just doesn't care." Preston looked exhausted. "What do you mean?" "Sit down, there's something you need to see." I showed Preston everything: the security footage of Mallory in my office, the text messages where she bragged to friends about taking down the gold digger, the emails where she had tried to recruit Preston's business partner to her side, claiming I was dangerous, screenshots of her research into ways to prove financial abuse. Preston's face went white as he watched. "This isn't about protecting you," I said gently. "This is about her wanting me gone." He stared at the screen. "Why would she do this?" "Because she hasn't accepted your marriage. To her, I'm replacing her mother." Preston shook his head slowly. "Her mother would be so disappointed." "Preston, I need to ask you something important. Do you trust me?" He looked at me then, really looked at me. "Yes, I trust you completely." "Then I need you to trust me with this situation." "Mallory won't stop until she faces real consequences." Preston nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" The next day, Rebecca filed a restraining order against Mallory. The evidence was overwhelming: illegal entry, theft of documents, harassment, defamation. The judge granted a temporary order immediately. Mallory would have to stay 100 yards away from me and our home. Preston had to deliver the news himself. I heard them on the phone, Mallory screaming accusations, while her father remained calm. "You did this to yourself," he told her quietly before hanging up. 2 weeks later, we attended the formal hearing. Mallory arrived with Catherine and a chip on her shoulder. She glared at me across the courtroom. The judge reviewed the evidence methodically: the security footage, the text messages, the documented harassment. "Miss Hoffman," the judge said finally, "your behavior constitutes a clear pattern of harassment and illegal activity." Mallory started to protest, but Catherine touched her arm. "The temporary restraining order is made permanent." Additionally, you're ordered to complete anger management counseling. Outside the courthouse, Mallory confronted Preston. You chose her over me, she said bitterly. I chose the truth, he replied. When you're ready to accept that, we can talk. She walked away without another word. The months that followed were quiet. Mallory made no attempts to contact us, though I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was struggling. Her boutique had closed. She'd moved back in with her aunt, Preston's sister, who wasn't thrilled about the situation. Preston was sad but resolute. She needs to face the consequences of her choices, he said one evening. I enabled her behavior for too long. Our marriage grew stronger. The crisis had forced us to communicate more openly, to establish clearer boundaries. Preston changed his will, ensuring Mallory would still inherit, but through a trust that required financial counseling. I love my daughter, he explained, but I won't let her destroy herself or anyone else. 6 months after the restraining order, Mallory's aunt called Preston. She's ready to apologize, she said, if you're willing to listen. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. Mallory looked different, thinner, tired, but somehow more grounded. I'm sorry, she said, her voice small. I was wrong about everything. She looked at me directly. You weren't stealing from Dad, you weren't using him. I just couldn't accept that he'd moved on from my mother. I nodded, accepting her apology. Preston reached across the table, taking his daughter's hand. We can rebuild this, he said, but it requires honesty, complete honesty. Mallory nodded, tears streaming down her face. It was a start. Over the next year, Mallory and I developed a cautious relationship. Not friendship, but respect. She completed her counseling and started a new job in marketing. She stopped making surprise visits and started calling ahead. She acknowledged her mistakes publicly, even apologizing to Howard and Diane for the uncomfortable dinner scene. Preston was proud of her growth. She's finally becoming the person I always knew she could be, he said. For my part, I learned something valuable. Sometimes protecting yourself means letting others face the consequences of their actions. I hadn't sought revenge. I'd simply documented the truth and let it speak for itself. The restraining order was lifted after Mallory successfully completed her counseling. Now, 2 years after that awful dinner, I can look back with perspective. Mallory's attempt to destroy my marriage had actually strengthened it. Preston and I had faced a real crisis and emerged more united. Mallory had learned painful but necessary lessons about respect and boundaries. Last week, she invited us to dinner at her new apartment. She'd furnished it modestly, within her means, and cooked a simple meal herself. Thank you, she said as we were leaving. For not giving up on me, even when I deserved it. Preston hugged his daughter tightly. In the car, he took my hand. You saved our family, he said, not by destroying Mallory, but by standing firm. I squeezed his hand, thinking about that envelope I'd handed across the restaurant table 2 years ago. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply refusing to be destroyed, maintaining your dignity, and letting the truth do the work. Mallory had tried to break my marriage. She'd failed because I'd been prepared, patient, and ultimately fair. In the end, everyone won, even her.